Hello and assalamu alaikum. Today I want to continue with a lecture regarding the role of faith and how important it is when seeking to achieve the sound heart. Of course, in previous videos, I've talked about the sound heart. The sound heart, of course, is a spiritual reference to the opposite of someone whose heart is constricted as a result of lack of belief and a lack of submission to God. And as a result of that, their condition is one of misery. And so when looking at the sound heart, that is the opposite of misery. And we want to understand how can we achieve this sound heart. A heart that is replete with tranquility, peace, satisfaction, and wholeness that every human being is seeking. And so in my previous video, we were talking about faith, we were talking about submission. I want to continue today to talk a little bit more about that. So without further ado, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So an important feature in the achievement of the sound heart is faith. The reason being is because faith is something that is much deeper than belief. When a person comes into the monotheistic faiths, be it Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, and it's one thing to say that, yes, you believe in God, and that's whole and good. There's some good, right, in that. But that is just a starting place from which faith can develop. And real faith is something completely different than mere belief. When a person first embraces whatever religion that I've just mentioned of these three, they are believers, no doubt. But God says that faith has not yet entered your hearts. And faith, therefore, becomes something that one seeks to strive for as a believer in order to change one's ontological condition and to transform the soul. Imam Ali, who is the rightful successor of the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him and his family, he says in a hadith, the pinnacle of faith is certitude. Meaning, of course, that when a person has achieved real faith, not just to the shahada in Islam. Shahada, of course, in Islam means that any person who wants to become Muslim, they have to say the confession of faith. And in confessing to the belief of God, Muhammad, his prophet, etc., they then become Muslim. And in doing that, they become one of the faithful. However, Imam Ali here is saying that there's degrees to this, right? That is perhaps the baseline when a person takes their shahada. That's the baseline of faith. They have accepted faith. They've entered into the realm of faith. But that's the baseline. But he says that the pinnacle of faith, right, is certitude, is when not only that you say you believe in God and you testify to that, but that you come to know that in your being, right? There's a certainty of being. That is the pinnacle of faith. And of course, the Quran in chapter 51, verse 20 testifies to this. It says that on the earth are signs for those of assured faith, right? There's a certainty ascribed to their faith, of assured faith. Now, it's important to keep in mind that this certainty of faith essentially means that one then becomes certain that God truly exists. This is ultimately what it means when we talk about to have certitude of faith. And it's the opposite of ignorance. Ignorance is when a person is not only someone who doesn't believe in God, but they're not sure one way or the other. Even if it means that they do believe, right? Even if that they do believe, they don't have certainty as of yet. Yaqeen, they don't have that as yet. And certainty is one of the main spiritual features of the transformation of the heart, and access to real life, which the believers, particularly in Islam, are called to. Okay, so this is very important to keep in mind. In chapter 39, verse 22, it says, is one whose heart God has expanded for submission, such that he follows a light from his Lord, a light whereby he can walk amongst men, be like him who is in the depths of darkness, from which he can never come out of. Thus, to those without faith, their deeds seem pleasing. Now, this verse talks about the heart or the breast of the human being, and that God has expanded the breast for submission. Another way of saying this is that God, as a result of them submitting to their wills to God and following the revelation, God has expanded their breasts, right, for Islam. Islam, of course, is an Arabic word that simply means submission. And such that he follows, as a result of this expansion of the breast, a light from his Lord. A light whereby he can walk amongst men simply means that walk here is seen as a metaphor, right? That, and a reference to being able to stand upright, okay? And also to be able to see, right? Because typically when a person walks, it's the result that they're able to see where they are and where they're going. And it's a powerful metaphor for also that they're able to have knowledge of things, and have an understanding of things, and know an understanding of the place of things in the reality of the spiritual world and the world that we live in as well. And this is made only possible by the fact that God has bestowed this light. And this light is only possible because the heart has expanded. Okay? And God says at the end of the verse, thus to those without faith, their deeds seem pleasing to them. God has anchored all this verse on the idea or the reference to faith, right? So thus without faith. Now, of course, like I said, faith includes those people who believe, who have said their shahada, who have embraced Islam, but more is required. This is only the base line of faith. It's not the pinnacle of faith, right? But this verse is a very clear exposition on what really faith entails and what does it look like. It is the light that expands the breast. In chapter 2, verse 257, Allah says that Allah is the protector of those who have faith. From the depths of darkness, He will lead them forth into light. Now, it's very important that we understand that in Islam, or certainly within the Quran, God always uses the term faith, both in a general sense as well as in a particular sense. The general sense, of course, referring to faith being Islam as a whole. This is the general sense, and therefore anyone who adopts and embraces Islam has entered the fold of faith. They are guided by it in the sense that all the things that they do, from prayer to supplications to du'as to fasting to abstaining from certain things, from only eating certain things, etc., is all part and parcel of faith. But faith in the particular sense that I'm speaking of here entails something much deeper, and I don't want to confuse these two things, because if we confuse these two things, we will potentially miss this specific sense of how I'm using faith. What's interesting though is that when you read verses like chapter 2, verse 257, where God says, Allah is the protector of those who have faith. From the depths of darkness, He will lead them forth into the light. Because there is this general sense of the term faith, certainly how it's used in the Quran, and there's also the specific sense of how I'm explaining this idea of faith as a certainty that enters the heart and give us the knowledge of the Creator. In this specific sense, from the Quranic perspective, it doesn't differentiate, it doesn't make an explicit differentiation between these two, because the general concept of faith is what is revealed to us in order to take us into this deeper level of faith, where it moves us from the position of mere belief in Islam to having certainty in the Creator and in our creation. Okay? And that's something that I will continue to constantly bring up as we go through this the lecture. I want to leave it there for today, and inshallah, God willing, I hope to see you in the following video. Assalamu alaikum and good day for now.